Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our police board meeting of Thursday. No, not Thursday. Those are council meetings. Tuesday, May the 17th. I'd like to begin today's meeting with an acknowledgement that we are on the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking people here in downtown Victoria, the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, and that we are working hard as a board to make connections with the nations on whose lands we work, and to make connections with all Indigenous people who now call the city of Victoria and the township of Esquimalt their home. Board, we have an agenda before us, and I need a motion, please, to adopt today's agenda. Thank you. Moved by Bella. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Michaela. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? Not opposed. That carries. Welcome to members of the public. As you can see, we have overcome all of our supply chain issues that prevented our board room camera from working. So it's great to be able to see, well, for you to see us again and participate in the discussions in such a way as to not be just staring at a blank screen. I'll note that we have our almost full board in attendance, and we've got board member Schachter and board member Dillon joining online. The next item of business is to adopt the minutes from April the 19th. I need a motion to adopt the minutes, please. Doug is moving. Is there a seconder to adopt the minutes? Seconded by Michaela. Thank you. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Next, we turn to the Chief Constable updates. The public will see in the written agenda on page 4 a summary of the Chief's activities since the last board meeting, including attendance at community events, also with respect to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So this is his opportunity to highlight from that list anything he thinks the board and the public should be particularly aware of. And then also to give the board and the public any other relevant departmental updates at this time. So Chief, I'll turn it over to you to do those things.
Sure, perfect. Thank you, Chair. The first thing I'll talk about is some of my internal engagement at VicBD. Started off on April 20th. Myself and the deputies held our biannual meeting with our staff sergeants, and we actually ended up having such a good discussion that we've actually scheduled another meeting for next week because we actually ran out of time. So again, it's just engaging our middle managers, speaking about how we can be better, how we can improve the organization, the culture of the organization, and also address some of the challenges that we have, whether it's workload, whether it's staffing, and how we can better connect and communicate better. The other things just internally are attended the Esquimalt division, checked in with staff there, and Inspector Michael Brown. I met with staff a couple Saturdays now. I've been in here for a number of other events, so I've checked in as our staff are here at the command post on April 23rd. I was here as our officers and staff are working for the Freedom Convoy protest that was occurring at the BC Legislature. Also came in this last Saturday after Buccaneer Days in Esquimalt after the parade and spent about an hour and a half talking to members of AWatch who were working on Saturday day shift. Externally, I've done a number of things. I met with Julian Daly, the Executive Director for Our Place Society, Jeff Bray, the Executive Director for the Downtown Victoria Business Association. So just continuing to engage with our external partners as we come out of COVID. Also during Literacy Week, I was invited by my old elementary school, George J, to come read to 2 of the classes. So I took the opportunity to do that. As I mentioned, I attended with the Buccaneer Day Parade with Inspector Mike Brown and with Deputy Chief Jason Laidman and a number of our volunteers. And I attended the Maritime Forces Pacific Change of Command ceremony. That event was held yesterday. So I'll move right on to on the bottom of that page 4 of my Chief's update is just the equity, diversity, and inclusion engagement. And so 3 sessions to report on. I attended the Ramadan dinner. Mayor Helps was there with me and hosted the event at City Council, or at Council Chambers. Attended that event, attended the virtual event, the Yom HaShoah Memorial Ceremony, hosted by Premier Horgan, And for Vasaki, attended the Khalsa Day celebrations at the Sikh Temple on Cecilia. In fact, he had closed off the street and had a number of booths and whatnot set up. In fact, Vic PD had a volunteer booth there as well, so I was able to partake in the festivities there. On the operational front, I wanted to just acknowledge, and the board members would have seen this in the media, but I wanted to highlight the heroic actions of two of our Vic PD officers when we had the arson just on Caledonia and Cook next to the Ukrainian church, which happened in the middle of the night. The family had to flee, and it was an incredible moment for first responders. Vic Fire attended and had their priority response and dedicated a tremendous amount of resources to that. But Vic PD officers were first on scene and were able to apply a tourniquet to a injured child that was leaving the residence there. And later on, the paramedics told our officers that had the officers not intervened in that moment, that there would have been tremendous blood loss. And in fact, it was life-saving first aid measures that they had performed. So just wanted to kind of highlight that for the board. That is an active investigation. We're looking at all angles. This is a serious crime, as the board is well aware, but we're looking at all angles of this, and one of it will be to determine if it was hate motivated. The next thing I just wanted to comment on a couple of incidents that we've had. One on Gorge Road, we had a robbery with a weapon where an individual went in, entered the convenience store, produced a knife and demanded cash. The suspect actually took the entire cash register and fled the scene on a bicycle. A short time later, our responding officers were able to locate the cash register on the corner, and about a half an hour later, after getting a really good description, we're able to locate and arrest the suspect. So that's a success there. In Esquimalt at 5:30 in the morning, our patrol officers responded to a dock in the 500 block of Head Street for a report of a man that had poured gasoline on a boat that was occupied, where somebody was sleeping on the boat and was trying to actually light the boat on fire. Luckily, the fire did not ignite, and the suspect had fled the scene. And in doing so, the suspect did utter death threats towards the two occupants on the boat. We were able to respond to that, get a really good description of this individual, and a couple hours later, we actually located and arrested this individual without incident. To share that, and then the last update that I have is I wanted to, as the board is well aware and our public is well aware, we've had a number of incidents regarding youth violence and youth crime and youth congregating in downtown Victoria over the last 5 weeks. A number of high profile swarmings, events, youth jumping on cars, kicking car doors, fights, disturbances, business owners that have been swarmed and sprayed with bear spray. And in one incident, a 70-year-old individual was swarmed by a group of 25 individuals. And the man was then further attacked by 5 or 6 of those 25 individuals that were swarming this 70-year-old male, and he was punched and injured. And luckily, he received facial injuries that were non-life threatening and received medical treatment. So just to provide the board with an update, I'm going to turn to Inspector Carolee Jones from our Community Services Division, who has been taking the lead on this and a number of initiatives that we've undertaken to address the youth congregating downtown issue. So Carolee, if I can just turn to you to provide the board and the public with an update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Yeah, and thanks for highlighting some of the incidents that we've encountered. We're finding that there is an increase both in the intensity and frequency of some of the violence that's occurring downtown as the weeks go on. We have been out as a Vic PD task force now for a few different weekends now. We're going to continue to do that. We're seeing, in addition to what you've described, we're seeing more weapons, knives, and bear spray in particular on our youth that we are arresting downtown for both criminal offenses as well as being intoxicated in public. We've had a group of youths swarm a couple in the 900 block Douglas Street, which was very concerning for us. And I think what this particular incident highlights is what we're hearing from some of the youth downtown. And I think what we are all curious about in the community is what's causing this. And I think there's a few different factors to consider. We know that COVID has the COVID itself. We're seeing the impacts of that, and people have not been able to connect as well as they would have liked. And so now they are able to connect. And so there's a real need to do that. We're certainly seeing very intoxicated youth as well as youth on drugs. This is exacerbating the issue. And the youth are wanting to come downtown, and it seems to be a place to be. And when we're talking to them about and I want to highlight, it's not all the youth. There's some great kids that are coming downtown, but the ones that are coming to our attention for their negative behavior, the reasons are basically that they're bored. They're looking for activity. They're looking for something to do. And as I said, they're looking for a way to connect. And so they just don't have the programs to support that. So what we're doing is we're kind of taking a bit of a twofold approach. And what I just want to highlight for the public is we are really working in coordination and consolidation with our all 3 school districts. The youth that we've identified are coming from all over the region, and they're coming downtown. So we are working with transit. We are working with the school districts. And we're looking for those for the cause and how to support the youth that we're finding are the most high risk, the ones that are with the weapons, the ones that are getting the weapons for other kids, the ones that are getting the liquor for other kids. And so the ones that are causing our issues are the ones that we really want to identify, and we are actively doing that. So we're looking for intervention strategies for those kids. And as I said, working with our schools. And the other piece that we're doing is really just educating, both through our community engagement division and in conjunction with our schools to parents and to those kids who may not understand what they're getting into when they're coming downtown. We want to reinforce that downtown is a safe place to be, but the behaviors that are occurring are not safe. And so we want to make sure that we're really educating parents both through the schools, through assemblies, and then through our own education here at Vic PD, and coordinating with all of our neighboring police agencies on how we can get this messaging across to parents that kids having weapons is not safe. Kids having bear spray is not safe. And what's going to happen is, we are working with Crown, and when kids have weapons, it's an offense and will be charged as such. So we just want to make sure that the public are really clear on that. Unfortunately, at Vic PD here, we don't have the luxury of having our school liaison officers as some of our neighboring regions do. We're feeling that loss right now. We are working with Inspector Mike Brown, who is in charge of the Esquimalt Division and that school program. He was part of our conversations, and I know we're all hopeful that we can get that back, because in a time like this, I know we're feeling the loss of that. So, but we are working with our neighboring agencies, and our community resource officers are doing the best that they can to fill in that gap. So moving forward, we are continuing our discussions weekly with our counterparts and coming in, and that includes transit. And we will be out with our youth task force on weekends and as needed, so that we can make sure that we get early intervention, which we're finding is very effective.
Thank you. Does that conclude your report?
It does.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that report, for that update, and for all the work you're doing out there. Chief, before I turn to the board for questions, is there anything else you wanted to?
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, questions or comments on this issue? Okay, Michaela.
I think that this is a really good opportunity to prioritize the return of school liaison officers to as many schools as possible. I think they are very have an opportunity to be very valuable in this situation. And certainly in my experience growing up in Oak Bay, our school liaison officer played a really meaningful role in our lives, generally, and also in response to any time that there was issues on the weekends and getting into trouble and mischief and underage drinking and stuff like that. So I think that is important that we prioritize it and bring it back up for discussion as often as possible, and especially when we're seeing repeated things like this.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Barb?
Just a question for the chief. Is there any sense of when that may be able to occur? Or I do know that in Esquimalt, Inspector Brown has had the community resource officers liaise with schools. Is that something that's happening across our?
Yes, it is. So we're doing the best that we can to fill the gap, but it's done off the corner of people's desks. I talked about my update during Literacy Week. I went to my old elementary school. I think tomorrow or Friday, I'm going to be going to Central Middle School because they've asked me to come speak to a class. And I know that a number of our officers are trying to get into the schools, but it's done on an ad hoc basis. It's not really building those connections and relationships that you would see on a day-to-day basis. And to answer your question about when that would be, I've had a number of meetings with Deputy Liebman and with Inspector Jamie McRae, and as the board is well aware, we have a number of vacancies and a number of areas in the organization, and our Human Resources Division through Inspector McRae created a list, and we actually prioritized a list that when we are hiring more individuals. In fact, I've hired 2 new recruits and 1 experienced officer. I'll be hiring another officer fairly soon in the next couple of weeks. Where are they plugging the holes and where do they go first? Our commitment has always been to make sure that our front lines are staffed first. So those that are responding to 911 calls, that they have the adequate resources. After that, we've got a prioritized list that is subject to change depending on priorities and need. This obviously will be taken into account if we can't get a handle on this sooner rather than later as to what we can do. But I would say at the earliest, it'll be September or October when the next school year is going to start. But even then, I'm just forecasting that a lot of it is dependent upon how many staff resign between now and then, and how able and how aggressive we can be at hiring exempt officers to fill some of those vacancies that we currently have.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Paul, go ahead. Paul, you're on mute. There you go.
Thanks. First, I really would like to say that I think that the department is doing a very thoughtful job of dealing with this unanticipated issue. And I, you know, at this point, I think that the approach is one that is very, very proactive and very much trying to deal with this as a problem to be solved rather than as just an enforcement action. And I think that's extremely positive. With respect to the school liaison officers, I've heard what Member Hayes has said many times, that with favorableness, I'd just like to point out, if we have a discussion of the reinstatement of school liaison officers, that there is a sector of the racialized community that is very much opposed to school liaison officers, and we should invite them to present before the board if the reinstatement of school liaison officers becomes an issue.
Thank you very much for that comment. Chief?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate the positive comments about the actions that we're taking, and that we're looking at it holistically and looking at the root cause of why the youth are coming downtown and challenging it from many fronts, not just enforcement. Just to your comment about the school liaison program, Inspector Michael Brown has been sitting representing Vic PD on a table where school board reps, community leaders are meeting, and they've been meeting for a number of months, assessing the school program, the police school liaison programs within a number of school districts here in the Capital Regional District. But one thing I want to be clear is and in some of the other areas, as you're well aware, across Canada and across BC, some of the school boards have actually stepped away from the police school resource program. One thing I just want to be clear, and I want to make my comments public, is the interesting thing is, when I spoke to the Muslim community and I was there, and they were talking to me and asking me to have police officers in their schools to educate them and to be good role models and to talk about policing in Canada. And I let them know that while there's a review that's currently undertaken, they actually were shocked because they go, nobody's asking us who's representing and speaking on our behalf. In fact, to the point where the board at the masjid actually wrote a letter of support for the Vic PD school liaison program, which I was able to forward to the group. Same thing when I speak to my own South Asian community, or I speak to many of our Indigenous communities. What I'm hearing is, who is speaking on our behalf to say that we want the police not to be there? Could there have been, and has there been past trauma with police? Yes, for sure. But the answer sometimes isn't to actually isolate and be divisive. The answer is to learn and educate and to grow from those experiences. And of course, we're hearing that loudly from many of the parents. So the final decision has not been made on how the school liaison program will look like in the CRD, but we're hopeful that enough of the community leaders from many of these BIPOC groups are standing up now and speaking and saying, you're not speaking on our behalf, that we actually support the program for all the reasons that we think that we want police to engage with our youth.
Thank you for that, Chief. Sean, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Inspector Jones, for the update. Two quick comments. Inspector Jones, or a question maybe. Inspector Jones, these are our children, our youth in our community. They're going through a lot of stressors and just like we all are from COVID and what have you. Is there anything, message perhaps that we can give to parents, perhaps who we wanted to have or should be having a conversation that we could help advance? Or maybe a message we could say to parents today. And two, it is something the community can do at large, whether it's the board or whether it's neighboring shops or neighboring, volunteers, whatever. There's something that they can do or they can look out for to help or assist the youth in helping the transition and finding more creative, more healthier outlets to sort of expend their energy, if you will. And then I have one quick comment after that for the chief. But I'll let Inspector Jones go and I could then make a follow-up comment to support what the chief just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sean. So your first question is, what is the messaging to parents on the kids coming downtown? Do you understand that right? Okay. Yeah, and I think I just want to reiterate that downtown is a safe place to come. We want to make sure that messaging is out there because it is. But the messaging that we want parents to know is that currently the situation that is occurring mostly on weekend nights, the behavior is unsafe. When we have weapons and intoxicated people, all people, it's generally not a good mix. So we want parents to know where their kids are. Make sure that what we're finding is a lot of parents, when we are connecting with them, taking intoxicated kids, back to the police station and waiting for parents to come and get them, is parents don't know what their kids are doing. When it comes to weapons, we're finding kids that are getting bear spray and they're saying that they're using the bear spray for protection. The use of bear spray against a human being is a criminal offense and will be dealt with as such. So we want parents to make sure that they're educated when it comes to, is bear spray a weapon? It certainly is if it's being used for self-defense against people. So there's some misinformation out there, and just to make sure that kids, are there other ways other than coming downtown, that their kids, we understand. And I think as human beings, we all want that ability to connect with each other again, but perhaps smaller groups, in their own communities, it would be preferable, especially at this time. And as far as, businesses, we encourage kids to, find constructive activities. Communities can help. Is there, can we get back to the different municipalities supporting kids in their own communities doing healthy activities like sports, and some of the rec centers have teen programs and skate parks, and getting back to finding constructive ways for kids to be. And I do just want to say one thing that we do know from our experiences of having our task force out there are the number of businesses that have been affected. And, they're very, very supportive of the work that's being done, and are actively coming out and reporting even more that's happened. So we are encouraging businesses, if you are being affected, please call the police. That's what we're here for. Public safety is what we do, and we do care, and we are on it. And we want, and do connect with your schools, because your schools now are all aware of what's going on. And if there's any questions, please contact us, please contact your schools. We're here to support and educate as best we can.
Thank you very much, Inspector Sean. Did you have a follow-up question or comment? I thought you said you had one more thing to add.
Yeah, really quick, 10 seconds. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I agree with the chief when he said the comments about different ethnic groups, community groups, they're wanting to have police reach out or talk to them, or have their policing partners, talk about being role model. I've experienced the same kind of questions as well, being out in the community. I'm South Asian. I'm also belong in the Muslim community as well. Same thing. Sometimes some of these folks wonder who we were speaking on their behalf when folks say they don't want certain things. Now I understand the conversation is much larger to CRD, and I look forward to that, how it plays out. But I agree with Mr. Shatner's comments that yes, we can perhaps reach out to some folks as well for their perspectives. It's totally fair. At the same time, recognize that there's another perspective, a group of people that actually want to have that support. I see the value in it, just like woman Michaela Hayes has said. During her time growing up, and I'll say myself as well, I've also experienced some positive influence as well, knowing that the liaison officer was there. Now, having said that, I know not everybody has the positive experience. Everyone's perspectives are different. I fully acknowledge that. But at the same time, I think there's opportunity here to explore as many avenues as possible. This is what we're hearing from our senior management, that this is something that is effective and working. I think it's worth considering at least, and revisiting to a certain extent. Because again, community groups are asking for it, and that's my personal support for that as well. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thanks, Sean. Any other comments on the Chief Constable's update or the youth situation that Inspector Jones has outlined? Chief?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Chair, if I may, I commented on the review that's going on with the school liaison program across the region. I'd like to just ask Inspector Mike Brown, who sits on the committee, just to provide the board with an update since he's on that committee. Mike?
Thanks, Chief. I'll be quite brief on this topic, but it is one that is near and dear to my heart. I have sat on what's called the SPLO committee for almost a period of 2 years now, obviously examining the efficacy of police involvement with schools in SD 61. And the only comment I'll make is this, and I would caution board members from making comments on BIPOC feelings about police in schools. I know the survey results, and others in the room may not, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think board members can make comments. Sean's made one set of comments. Paul's made another set of comments. The reality is there's going to be a diversity of opinion on the community resource officers or the school liaison officers. The school liaison officers. There will be a variety of opinions because there's a variety of opinions in our community, and it doesn't mean that one board member is right and one board member is wrong, or one is so. And that's part of the complexity as inspector. I think you're well aware of from having to make these difficult decisions. You're out there in the field. You're seeing these diversity of opinions. So I think there's going to be always conversation, and I think that's what the community wants to have, and the board wants to have. Welcoming a diversity of opinions, recognizing that no one's right and no one's wrong. And there's going to be some benefits to many kids from having these school liaison officers, just as there have been in the past. And Michaela has already shared stories from her teen life. And there are some people who will feel it's not appropriate. And our job as the board is to support the department in making the decision that's gonna benefit the most number of people. And we've had these school liaison officers for years, and it's gone pretty well for most people, for most kids. And so if we can get them back in the classroom, as we've had them for years, that's great. Will everyone love it? No, they won't. Can we express diversity of opinions about it? We absolutely can. So yeah, I wanted to thank you for that, Inspector, for your work on that committee. And I would say the board is keen to hear more whenever there's recommendations ready to come forward. All right, we will move on then. I don't see any further discussion to the roadmap for a healthy and inclusive workplace. And just to give the public context, this is something that the chief and senior leadership and others in the department have been working on to make sure that Vic PD is a healthy place to work, an inclusive place to work, and that we really provide good services, not only to Vic PD members, but also to their families, and that we create a workplace that really thrives on equity, diversity, inclusion, and health. So Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk through this, and then we'll go to questions and comments.
Sure, perfect. Thank you, Chair, for that. So I'll just start off on just page 1 of the roadmap. We broke up the roadmap into 3 different areas, or 3 different headings or categories. And the first one being mental health and wellness. The second one is equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the third one is just overall leadership to be kind of a catch-all category. So what we wanted to start off with when it came to mental health and wellness is we wanted to create a joint committee. And that was made up of senior police leaders and union representation from both the police and QP Local 50 as well. So we've actually done that now. We've had 2 meetings. We had a meeting on May 16th, and I wanted to also report out on, since I've actually prepared this document for the board, we had another meeting yesterday. And one of the things that we agreed in the meeting that we had yesterday was looking at some of the recommendations coming from the survey and assigning, well, first defining what would be short-term, medium-term, long-term, and then assigning short-term, long-term, medium-term timelines to the completion of the goals that we mutually felt we wanted to accomplish, knowing that some are going to be more complex than others, but also knowing that there's some low-hanging fruit and there's some easy wins, as there always is when there's some recommendations that we think we can act on. And so the committees, I'm committed to going back to the committee with some minutes, and then we're going to kind of just over the summer work on a number of areas of kind of refining the work. We are going to revise this roadmap. So there will be new initiatives that will be added to it, and then certainly we want to provide actionable updates to that. So the first one was just the creation of a committee. The second one really is looking at mental health and wellness resources that are available to staff. We want to do a review of the inventory of what services that we currently have and what can we do to improve on it. And actually, since the survey, I'm happy to report that HR has worked diligently and has a peer support team that is now established, that was established in February. And they've actually received training from Dr. Tim Black, who's a University of Victoria associate professor in counseling psychology, and who specializes in PTSD and trauma, especially first responder trauma. And so this team is already up and running, but again, this is just one aspect of a whole area, an array of products that we want to make sure that are available to our staff and identifying any further gaps. Initiative 3, it's all about communication. So we can have available mental health services and supports, but how are we communicating that to our staff? How do we get the information out and better connect individuals to these resources? So we want to really kind of look at the current systems that we have in place and how do we encourage communication and availability of these services to our staff. The fourth one is creating a formal Vic PD wellness program. We wanted to really be inclusive of being prevention-focused health and wellness initiatives. So again, being proactive, intervene early, and prevent individuals from experiencing trauma and perhaps filing a claim for occupational stress injury. And on that, one of the things that we're going to be assessing is the efficacy of implementing mandatory annual psychological assessments. Currently, as the board is aware, we have mandatory assessments annually for certain staff in certain specialty sections. Is it time to expand that? And if so, how widely? Should that be expanded to include our civilian staff who have indicated in the survey that they're experiencing PTSD at levels that we originally hadn't anticipated? And on April 22nd, HR circulated a survey to staff, again, seeking staff's input on what would they like the department to consider when we're drafting our new wellness program. So seeking input from staff, who in many cases know best what would serve them best. Initiative 5 is looking at hiring an in-house psychologist to provide our staff with immediate access to professional mental health support. So talk about being proactive, again, stopping people from going off on occupational stress injuries, deal with it in the first instance where possible. And Inspector McRae and his team has done a great job of drafting a job description that will be posted next month, as will initiative number 6, which is hiring an occupational health nurse to oversee and manage and support our human resources division for those that are off on physical or occupational stress injuries. Both of those positions are going to be posted next month. Initiative 7 is looking at the larger Vic PD family and including families in ensuring there's mental health education, tools and support and emotional support, recognizing the difficult job of our staff. And on that, the union and management have been able to support an initiative brought forward by spouses to create a Vancouver Island chapter of Canada Beyond the Blue. So it's a nonprofit society that helps build peer relationships. Initiative 8, this touches on a lot of the feedback that we're getting from our staff, which is we're not adequately staffed and people are experiencing burnout, and what we need more people to do the work, and there's a lot of empty chairs. And if we had more people here, we would be able to take a breath and be able to find some balance when we do come to work. And in that note, we've hired a recently retired Vic PD officer on a professional services contract. These are regular meetings. The champion and lead on this is Deputy Chief Jason Lakeman. I've given him a tremendous amount of leeway to hire as many people as we need in the human resources division to build the capacity to hire the staff that we need at Vic PD. When I say staff, I mean police officers and civilian staff. We have vacancies in many areas of this organization. On the EDI front, there's a number of initiatives, but a lot of the initiatives are going to be based on hiring an external EDI facilitator, somebody who is an expert in this field, somebody who is a subject matter expert who can help guide the work that we're going to undertake in this area. And so what we're looking at is the development of a comprehensive EDI strategy. And so we feel that that external facilitator that's a subject matter expert in EDI would be able to assist us. We're looking at a timeline of September by the time that we get the job description, get the job posted, and get somebody hired to this organization. Initiative number 2, I'm actually going to just ask Deputy Chief Lakeman just to provide the leadership that he's providing to our own internal Vic PD EDI committee.
Yeah, actually, as a notes here, we had our first meeting as sort of the Refresh EDI committee on May 12th. And I can tell you it was a full 2 hours. We did not, I established an agenda, but that was a placeholder. We actually dove into introductions and getting to know each other to figure out, what are we going to be looking at internally? What does the group and the committee want to discuss? We had some deep dives into some interesting topics for sure. I treated it as a trust building exercise in the first instance. This group has to have tough conversations before we can have tough conversations elsewhere. And then the other thing, I won't get too far into it, but the other thing I noted is, what we discussed, what do we need out of a consultant? What to bring in? What does Vic PD need? What are the people who have signed up and volunteered their time for this committee? What would they like to see out of the committee? Ultimately, it would be way down the road. It would be my pleasure to disband an EDI committee because we just don't have to think about it. And we discussed that at length as well. So I was very pleased with the first meeting. I think we have another meeting in another couple of weeks to start hammering out what we're going to be looking for in that consultant. Forward.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Deputy. And then initiative 3 and 4 really are gonna, we're gonna be able to advance them once we've identified the EDI facilitator, because, you know, we don't have the expertise internally to start establishing a clear definition and a common understanding of what equity, diversity, and inclusion means, and how that can be consistently communicated. I mean, I've got some ideas on how to communicate, but when it comes to establishing a clear definition, I think that we want to be guided by somebody who is an expert in this area. So we're gonna add that to kind of the list of things we're looking at. And also when it comes to examining the internal state of EDI, and that'll be inclusive of hiring practices, promotion practices, looking at our organizational policy impacts. We have barriers in our policies within Vic PD. We think that we would be well suited and better suited to be guided by an expert in that area. So we've established some timelines. I'm trying to hold ourselves accountable as the board would want to what some of the timelines are. Now, well, some of these timelines will be adjusted, but as you can see, we put some timelines for November 2023, and some maybe even be 2020 or November 2022, and somewhere into 2023. But you know, we'll keep the board informed, because I know that the board is interested in receiving monthly updates on the progress that we're making on this roadmap. And the last couple things is, and just I wanted to just touch on leadership. And I wanted to just touch on some of the feedback that I've seen from the survey and how our staff have asked for better lines of communication between our senior leadership team, different ranks in the organization. And it's not just communication, it's two-way communication. And in addition to the two-way communications, it's actually engagement. Ask us how we can help. And we want to be a part of making sure that we have a healthy organization and we have engagement within the organization. So I think that shows that our people care, that they're committed, and that they're invested emotionally. So these are good things. But I've got a couple of ideas. But like I say, I'm going to be able to expand when our new committee, we've had 2 meetings, and our joint committee is going to be meeting further. And I'm meeting with our senior leadership team on other areas that where we can make concentrated efforts to improve communication. Because I think that can be done literally at no cost, but it can have a really, really important impact on our people when we know that they're valued and that they are adhering with what's happening within the organization, both up and down and throughout. So I'll leave my update at that. And this was draft 1. Like the board had asked me to draft the roadmap. I had committed to the board that in the May board meeting, I would have something to you. So I'm certainly open to listening to what feedback you have.
Excellent, thanks, Chief. Yeah, and that's exactly the point of this. This is a draft. The board can give input. The chief and his team can go away and update it and then bring it back to June or July, and then we can have a motion at that time to ratify it. So I'll start with anyone who wants to make questions or comments. Yeah, Bella, go ahead.
I'm just so excited. This is absolutely phenomenal. This is exactly the kind of work that I'd like to see be done. This is amazing. I love all the things about mental health, especially coming out of the pandemic. It's just phenomenal to see. And then obviously diversity and inclusion is something I'm so passionate about. So I'm really happy to see a huge emphasis on this. Great job, team. Can't wait to hear the updates as we continue on.
Thank you so much. Other comments or questions? Yeah, Charlotte?
Yeah, this is a incredible amount of work that I know was done by you and your team. So well done. It's so thorough. And yeah, when things are done so well, sometimes it's hard to comment. So I just wanted to say thank you. You've done a great job.
Thank you. I'll just add a few comments. I agree with the 2 previous speakers, and this is my bailiwick. I love this kind of strategic planning and action planning. So I agree that it is excellent. One of the things that I would like to see added, and I flag this for the chief in advance, is for each of the sections, and I don't mean each of the initiatives, but each of the 3 sections, to have 3 to 5 outcomes that we're aiming for. So this is our roadmap to and Deputy Chief Laidman, when he was giving his update from the committee, this isn't exactly what you have as an outcome, but something like we've done this work so well that EDI is integrated throughout the organization. In the equity, diversity, and inclusion and outcome. I don't want to write the outcomes, I'm just giving examples. We will have developed a common understanding of equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout the organization. And the reason to have outcomes is that we can measure, are we getting there? And so I think, and also it's aspirational. So that's what I would suggest adding to this, as for each of, like, right at the top, it can have number 2, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It can have, you know, the 3 to 5 outcomes and then roll into the initiatives and all the other stuff. I think that would really, yeah, then we know where we're aiming. Yeah, that is my only feedback for strengthening, and look forward to seeing what those are. Paul, go ahead.
Thanks. I echo the comments. They're just, I understand this is a work in progress, which is great. I know you mentioned that you worked with your team on what the goals are. I think, you know, many of the initiatives look like action issues rather than goal issues. So if there are goals that can be articulated, that also might be something to be included in the roadmap, and potentially targets, if appropriate, in certain areas. So just consider that as well, Chief. And the other thing is that a lot of this is procedural, which is, you know, of course, necessary. At some point, you're going to determine what actions have to be taken. And normally, I do see part of the roadmap as the mayor said, putting outcomes, but also putting actions to implement the outcomes.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, and I think this is, as the chief said, a really iterative document. And so we've got the first series of actions here. It's kind of hire EDI coordinator, set up the committee, and then once those are in place, this will be a living document that will be updated with, okay, so now we've done those actions, what are the next actions that follow? So yeah, I think that's a good point. And this will be a living document, not something that we approve in June 2020 and it stays like that for the next 3 years. And that's how we'll know we'll be successful, if we're iterating on the document. I share Bella's excitement about this document and this work. Anyone else wish to comment? Chief, do you feel like you have enough direction, some high-level goals to frame it all up, 3 to 5 outcomes for each section? And I think everything else that's here is a good start.
Yeah, no, I believe I do. I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the board support. And at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is we're trying to improve our organization. We're trying to support our people. We're trying to make sure that we have a responsible, respectful, equitable organization where people want to come in. They feel supported, there's enough staff to do the job, and there's open lines of communication up and down the organization, and staff continue to be engaged both physically and emotionally as well.
Thank you. Yeah, this is good. So we'll look forward to, don't rush, June or July is fine, and then we'll get this adopted. It'll become an official policy of the board and the department, and we'll continue to do the work. And thank you to everyone who's involved, particularly to the people who step forward to sit on this new committee. Takes courage sometimes to do that work. So thank you to that team and everyone else.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to committee reports. Those are on pages 10 to 25 of the agenda. And we'll just turn to committee chairs to give updates. There are no motions. So I'll start with HR if you want to give an update, and then I'll turn to finance. For finance, we do have 2 reports that we can have our controller walk through. So Charlotte, anything to add to what's written here?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to finance then. We'll let the committee chair introduce the items here.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm looking for Controller Steve Burcombe to come online. Here yet?
Controller Steve Burcombe is on.
Pardon me?
It's on holidays.
Well, I didn't know that.
Back tomorrow.
I will speak to it. The first report is the April 2022 overtime report, and I guess Steve's report, and as every month report is, he gives a very good background and summary of his report, and I would leave that open to any questions from the board.
Thank you. And for the public, the board requested this overtime report so that we can track overtime. And as you can see, when you look through the report, it's mostly additional patrol callouts that are driving the overtime to backfill patrol because we are still short-staffed. And so people are working extra hard. And that's the reason for the main reason for the overtime issue, and that's highlighted in a really good bar graph that Steve put together for us on page 15 of 28 of the agenda. The next item for finance is the monthly financial report. Doug, do you want to speak to any highlights?
Again, very briefly, I'll speak to that. The April 2022 monthly financial report is roughly 4 months into the fiscal year. And as you see, we spent 32.7% of our budget, which is slightly over budget due to the timing of the benefits expenditures, which tend to be front end loaded on a fiscal year, and the overtime expenditures, which we've already spoken to. But I think, in my opinion, and I know Steve's opinion was the same, that it's largely in control for this fiscal year. I don't think we anticipate any serious variances from the budget. And again, with that, if any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? We did go over this at Finance Committee, but it's here for the public's information as well. There are no further committee reports, so I'm going to turn to board co-chairs update. And I think Co-Chair Desjardins has some information here for us.
Thank you, and I hope Deputy Laidman can help me out if I need any further information. At the quarterly report in Esquimalt this past week, the question was asked around prolific offenders and whether we have data on those. It was not necessarily to be specific to Esquimalt unless you were able to do it, but the council wanted to understand what the challenge is in terms of prolific offenders, frequent flyers, and how that is affecting policing, and of course the letter from the mayors. And if that data is available, and the request was really if it could be brought at the next quarterly report as well, and it wasn't something that was meant to occur all the time, just an update on that issue.
So I did flag it for our intel analysis section, and it is probably a task that can be done by the next quarterly report if the board approves. The other thing I'll just flag for you is the hiring of the consultants by the province to look into the prolific offender issue. Now there's a timeline of 3 months on that. If I'm doing my math and call that, might be able to help me out. That report actually might be made public prior to that, which might inform the board more, depending on the depth of what that report's going to as reported back to the soldier. So I'm looking forward to that one for sure, and I imagine that we'll be consulted on that front. And I know there was some ministry even made a number of statements that I'm looking forward to certainly commenting on or getting consulted on in the future.
Thank you. So the request is for the board to approve that Esquimalt receive that information at the next quarterly report.
Can we make it as filed, and Victoria?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So that is, can someone make that motion for Mayor Desjardins? So by yeah.
May I ask a clarifying question? Because this will be important. Is the data that you're looking for, maybe we'll have to take this offline because there's a number of parameters that we have to sort out, like where the offender lives, where they have been living, where the crimes are occurring.
I don't think we want any of that.
Detailed. This is just to understand the extent of it and what kind of level there is in our judgment. And it's not, doesn't have to be broken down.
It's probably similar information to what the BC Urban Mayors, what you've already provided to the BC Urban Mayors Caucus. I think that it just hasn't been provided to two of our councils.
That's right.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we need a motion then to present that to councils. Is there a mover? Bella, is there a seconder? Seconded by Doug. So that will be provided to councils in the next quarterly update. All those in favor of that motion? Are there any opposed? None are opposed. That carries. Okay, thank you very much, my co-chair colleague. That takes us to BC Association of Police Board Directors update. Charlotte, I'm going to
Great, thank you. So we are preparing for our in-person BCAPB conference. That is next Thursday and Friday. And as president, this will be my very first time chairing an in-person meeting with the association. So I'll probably have more updates at the next meeting after the conference. but we're very excited to get together. We're definitely having a lot of time for conversation. We're prioritizing a World Cafe where we can collect and gather information and perspectives from different board members and helping guide BCAPB through our next year and serving our members and our communities in a good way.
Very much, and thanks for your work. Any questions on BC Association of Police Boards work or conference? Okay, seeing none, the next item is board member engagement update, and this is here for any member of the board to share any work that they've done between last meeting and this meeting, things they've heard out in the community, things they're working on, events they've attended. It's just a general opportunity to share. So Sean, I see your hand. I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Rich Mayor. Just want to thank the board for allowing me to represent them at the April 26th National Volunteer Recognition event at the department. I want to just highlight that it was wonderful to talk on behalf of the board and thanking the volunteers. Our volunteers were not only the reserve constables, but also general volunteers that support department. I was surprised to learn that we have some members that been 14 years on the reserve constable side, which I thought was really amazing. But one group of members that have been for 25 years, which is amazing to see that there's so much support from the community. People who dedicate their personal time and lives to just a general wellness and safety of the community. And I thought it was amazing. Both Esquimalt and Victoria. So I just want to thank again, word to the mayor for the opportunity to speak, and I thought it was a really good, well-attended event. It was the first event many volunteers have been to, and obviously it's post-COVID time, so to speak. So it was really well received, and thanks to Chief as well for his board comments, and deputy chiefs are also in attendance. I think it really showed some great leadership, showing how much value they add to the community. And I know some of these members. Volunteers, they want to go into policing. It was a great avenue for them to sort of experience what the world is like and what it's like to provide safety for your community. So if we're going to see some of them, hopefully will go on and maybe apply and become officers, which will just add to their background and experience. I'm sure some of the senior members can probably attest to the value of having that knowledge. So just wanted to thank for that opportunity. And I also want to mention on April 23rd, I attended at the Royal BC Museum. There was an art exhibit of 18th century art and artifacts for part of Sikh Heritage Month. And I was able to attend, and of course I went on behalf of the board member, just sort of being in the audience, if you will. But it was a really neat community event. It was free, and I think it was really nice to see recent South Asian immigrants, people like myself born here, people who've been here for much longer than I have, pioneers as we call them, and they were all in awe. And it really was nice to see the community come together and celebrate Sikh Heritage Month, which was a great role. Showcase the diversity that we have in our community. Again, it was there are also members of the Vic PD department that were there supporting volunteer in their own time. So I thought that was really good to see. See how members give back to their own community, and especially the ones who are show diversity and inclusion, and how they can promote that and support their own community and the next generation of folks who are living here in Victoria and making Victoria their home. So thank you very much for that opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else want to report any activities that they've been involved in as police board members? I'll just note that I spoke on behalf of the board at the recruit swearing in ceremony a couple of weeks ago to welcome 2 new recruits to go off to the Justice Institute and become Vic PD officers. And one of them is the daughter of a current Vic PD officer, which I think was a proud moment for everybody. So, all right. Board strategic priorities are here for the board and the public. Just for information, I will remind the board committee chairs that next month your quarterly updates, or I guess triannual updates, are due. So those would come through the June committee meetings and then be presented to the public at the June board meeting. So I know that's a bit of work for the committee chairs to just write up what progress we're making on these priorities. So I just wanted to flag for all of you that that is for June. And if no one has anything else on the strategic priorities or the framework agreement, which is again here just for our information in case there are any issues that need to be raised. Don't see any hands flying up. So I will need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Actually, one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Outside of our strategic piece, I recently was looking at my calendar and our next board meeting is scheduled for June 21st, which is Indigenous Peoples' Day. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention of our board and the question of, do we want to keep our meeting on that day, or do people have other prior arrangements and places they want to go and celebrate in community? I personally have someplace I need to be for Indigenous Peoples' Day, and I won't be here, and I don't think we need to reschedule a meeting just for me, but I know that there might be other people here out in community, and I wanted to raise that for our board to discuss.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Are people able to meet the week of the 28th instead?
That's in June.
Yeah, June 20th. So it would be 1 week later. We would just postpone the board meeting by 1 week to be respectful of people who may wish to be involved in Indigenous Peoples' Day. Okay, and are we good? Okay. Sean, okay, Paul, I see your hand.
No, I was just going to support changing the date.
Okay, because the board schedule is set by motion, we do need a motion to move the board meeting from June 21st to June 28th. Made by Bella, is there a seconder? Seconded by Charla. Any discussion? Okay, so Colette, you'll update our calendars and then we'll also change the public notification on the board's website to make that note. Good. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for raising that, Charla. All those in favor of moving the board meeting? Any opposed? Okay, none are opposed. That carries. That does bring us to the end of our business, and so I need a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you, Charla. Is there a seconder? Paul, I still see your hand up. Can I count you as a seconder to adjourn?
Yes, you can.